The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, and help me welcome Steve Stephanek, the Honorable Steve Stephanek, who was once a representative and now head of the GOP in New Hampshire. Steve, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on the show, Kyle. I really appreciate it.
Okay, and tell the audience what you're planning on doing to pull the GOP back together again.
Well, as you know, I've been elected for just over a month now, and it's been a very, very busy month. But we're doing some very exciting things. The first thing I did, as I said I would, as I got down to D.C., and I had some very productive meetings with the RNC. I met with the chairwoman of the RNC. I met with the entire staff over at the RNC. I also went over and met with the entire staff of the Trump campaign committee. And they're universally in support of the New Hampshire Republican Party, and New Hampshire is a top-tier state for them. And as they put it, we are going to be putting a lot of resources into New Hampshire for 2020. Now, I went down there and specifically said, we need to get New Hampshire reorganized, and we need some help. So I asked for 6 specific positions, 5 field people that I will put out, probably assign each one to an executive council district, as well as a top-rated communications person that we feel we need to get out of the DC area. And they, I'm pleased to say that they're looking very favorably on it. In fact, our very first hire will be on Monday. We're bringing somebody on board that'll be that we'll receive funding from the RNC for, and they believe the rest of them will be on board and on the ground here in New Hampshire before the end of this month. So we're going to go from 2 full-time employees to 8 full-time employees by the end of March.
No, that's pretty good.
So that's very significant. They've also told me, and they went through in great detail, the data operation that they have there. And I was actually down there and talked to the people and witnessed it all. But they've spent literally hundreds of millions of dollars on the data program that they have, and it's top shelf. And that's all going to be available to us. And in fact, they're talking about putting a full-time data person here in New Hampshire by as early as April or May. Okay. So that'll bring our staff up to at least 9 people. So I'm very, very excited about that. I'm obviously out there doing fundraising with major donors. As I said earlier, one of the first things I did was put together a business plan. I put a rough draft together. I have then turned around and given it to everybody on the e-board and a whole host of other people, and asked them, I said, I have no pride in authorship. I want you to rip it apart, make criticisms, make additions, and then we're going to take all of that in the next week or 2 and put together a final product, which we will be putting out. This is our plan to win, to turn New Hampshire red in 2020. So that is going exceptionally well. I've been having meetings with major donors, which have been well received. I was actually in the office of a major donor, and he looked at me and says, Steve, I've been in the state for 16 years, and he said, every 2 years I have a new chairman coming to me, Republican chairman, looking for money. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't contributed. But he said, you are the very first chairman to come into my office and actually present me with a business plan. And he says, I can tell you I'll be supporting you down the road. Yeah. So that's the kind of response we're getting. I'm seeing energy across the board as I go to the various meetings. We were at Stratford County, which normally has 15 or 20 people that go to a monthly meeting. They had 42 people, which was a record for them.
I think people are reacting to what's happening.
Nothing like a good kick in the head to get your attention, and I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
And so we're very excited about the direction of everything. I've set up already 2 new committees. The first committee, I tapped Kate Day, and she agreed to run the committee for me. And each county and city committee are required to put 1 member on her committee. And in this state, we have 268 towns and 35 city wards. And we have a total of 60 town committees with less than 1,300 members. I've set as a goal that we create 100 new town committees and 30 city ward committees. And I want to see the membership go from 1,300 to over 9,000 people. And we're getting a lot of excitement about this. And as I said, Kate is heading the committee. She has a seat on the e-board. We're tracking it. We're holding everybody accountable at every monthly meeting as to how many town and city committees are being created. And at this juncture, Kate tells me she's optimistic that we could have 10 or 15 new town committees by the March meeting.
Oh, that's great.
Just in the first month. And, you know, beyond that, we're not just going to create the committees, but we're going to nurture them. It's like you plant a seed. It starts to grow.
You got to water them and fertilize them.
Exactly. You've got to nurture them, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to be training for all of the town committees and city ward captains. So we're going to teach them how to run a meeting, how to raise money, how to attract more members into their group. We're going to be doing data training with all the new data that we have coming from the RNC. And I said, when I was down there, I said, you know, we had a problem the last time where we would go and they would, you know, punch up the app and they had to tie into the internet and the circle would go round and round and round while they're waiting, tapping their foot and trying to converse with the homeowner before they could enter their data. I said, we need something that's self-contained, that is instant, so that they can get the information and not tie up the homeowner. Right. And then when they get back to the office, they can download the information. We've got it. And so we're going to start training the town committees on how to use this. We're going to start training the county committees on how to use that. So when we get to 2020, we're going to have 9,000, 10,000 people, volunteers who are already trained, already activated, ready to hit the ground, ready to start knocking doors, making phone calls, and working for all of our candidates. And this is what I talked about when I got elected. We are about creating a sustainable, strong grassroots organization. The other committee I set up was under Pam Tucker, and she's the new vice chair. And this committee is solely dedicated to recruiting candidates. She's working very closely with the House and the Senate, but I set as a goal that we are going to have 400 candidates in place by February 1st of 2020. We're not going to wait till the last minute and be scrambling around trying to beg people to run for office. We're going to vet people, we're going to train people, and we're going to have them ready to go by February 1st. So that's getting a lot of positive feedback. We're already starting to get candidates excited. But it's because people see that we're getting involved, that we're taking positions. One of the other things I've been doing is very actively being involved in the legislation that's going through the House. As I said back in, as I was running for chairman, the Democrats are going to do a lot of stupid things. They can't help themselves. We have to hold them accountable. So every one of these bills that's coming forward, I am sending out press releases. I'm coordinating with the House and the Senate and the governor's office. And the exciting thing is that in every case, in every one of these bills that has now been voted on, Republicans in the legislature have stayed together as a bloc.
Good.
And so the governor knows now that when he goes to veto these bills, he's got the votes that'll sustain his vetoes, which means that the legislature and the state party have his back. And that's very important for the governor and for the state of New Hampshire, because some of this stuff is absolutely crazy. I mean, they're talking an $800 million carbon tax. I mean, that's going to push up your cost of electricity, your cost of heating oil, your cost of gasoline. hugely. Think about that, $800 million spread over 1.3 million people. That's over $700 a year per person. Plus, it has an impact on all of the municipalities and their costs, and businesses and their costs. It's absolutely crazy. And it's just one thing after another. And, you know, we have got a hugely successful economy. Businesses are growing. They're creating new high-paying jobs. We are right now have the fastest growing economy, not in New England, not in the Northeast, but we're just behind places like Florida and Texas. New Hampshire is right up there as one of the fastest growing economies right now. And part of that is the pro-growth, pro-business regulations and attitude that Governor Sununu and the legislature had last term.
And they want to take a lot of that away.
They want to take it all away. They basically want to reinstitute the regulations that the governor took away. They want we've seen business profits taxes go down from the highest in the region to now we're in the middle of the road, and we're still scheduled to see more. But the most important thing to remember is even though those taxes have come down, the revenue being generated by them has increased and is greater than the amount of money that was raised when they were higher.
And when the Democrats were forecasting holes in our budget because of that.
Governor, at the time, Governor Hassan said we were going to blow a $90 million hole in our budget if we put these taxes in place. In fact, I think we're 146 million. I could be wrong on that number.
For the rainy day fund?
Well, no, for the excess.
For the excess.
Over the projection of what we were supposed to get. So it's bringing in more money than it has ever brought in the history of the state. And what do they want to do? They want to jack them up again. And they want to send a signal to business that we don't want you here. We don't want you in New Hampshire. We don't want your jobs in New Hampshire. Go away. That's what they're saying. And fortunately, we have the governor who's going to veto this, and fortunately, we have a legislator that has the governor's back. And my job is to make sure that everybody is aware that this is the position of the governor and this is the position of the legislature. So we're working on getting those press releases out now. Granted, the press doesn't print many of them, but we still send them out to our email list. We send them out to all our state party members, all of our legislators. So we're getting tens of thousands of emails out and letting people know where the Republican Party stands.
That's a more or less free advertisement. Are you using, you talked about a communication person, are they going to focus on some of the social media type of things?
Oh yeah, we've got Twitter accounts, we've got Facebook accounts. In fact, I was down in they have a social media department down in DC. Down in the basement. There's about 40 or 50 kids down there. I think the oldest one was maybe 22. And all they're doing is Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram and a couple of others I've never even heard of. And they're providing content, and we're going to be able to tie in, and we are tying into all of that. So we are getting that involved in that social media platform in a very big way.
One of the things that we're doing here that you might want to consider is we're having forums now. I'm having 4 ex-representatives discussing the legislation that's going through each week. And we have an hour show. Now it goes right to YouTube right away. I don't know if it goes to the Nashua website, but I don't know if the state is using it or not. I think it's a valuable thing to use, but other people should be doing similar work in different parts of the state.
And again, we're trying to hold our Democratic colleagues accountable for what they're doing. So, for example, when the Virginia governor a few weeks back talked about the fact that it's okay to murder born children, or he had racist pictures on his in his yearbook, his medical yearbook, or the lieutenant governor was accused of sexual assault twice from 2 different women, or the attorney general again, had racist pictures. And then you've got the representative in Michigan who has made anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic comments. A lot of Democrats did step forward and criticize these individuals. Our 4 Democratic members of the federal delegation, Senator Shaheen, Senator Hassan, Congressman Pappas, and Congresswoman Custer, all were silent.
Well,
They've had no comment on any of this, yet they're very quick to instantly, even ahead of getting all the facts, criticize Republicans. So I sent out a press release after the first weekend asking them where they stood. The citizens of New Hampshire need to know. Then a week went by, I sent out another press release. Another week went by, we held a press conference, which got a lot of play, and asking where. Now, we finally did get an answer from Senator Shaheen and Senator Hassan when they actually voted to allow born children to be murdered.
right.
Where do you draw the line? Is it the child is born, okay, it's okay to kill it. Where do you draw the line? Do you say, well, you know, my kid didn't get into the preschool I wanted. Boom, you're dead. Where do you go? Where do you draw the line and say
Where's
it's
the logic on some of that too?
Right.
I don't understand how they justify that at all.
And believe me, we're holding them accountable, and we are going to make sure that the people of New Hampshire are aware of where they stand on this, because this isn't an abortion issue. This child is now alive.
Right.
And they're still killing it. And it's like, where do you go from there? How far is that line allowed to creep? And we've got to stop it and say, it stops right here.
Well, I think that's what Scalia said when that bill was talked in the Supreme Court. You have to define when that's a child that's a human being.
A viable human being.
Yeah. And so if you can have the state or somehow define that, he says, that's the time.
This is no definition. This child has been born and is breathing and is alive. And they still are going to murder it.
But even what they wanted to do just before, you know, the birth, the actual physical leaving of the woman's body, they wanted to be able to still kill it there.
I agree. I mean,
that's a horrible thing too.
I think that any type of abortion in the 3rd trimester is just atrocious. I mean, I'm not for any abortion whatsoever, but especially most Americans, the vast majority of Americans agree that abortion in the 3rd trimester is unacceptable. But, you know, so we're working very hard to make things happen. You know, we're very excited. We have Laura Trump coming on April 2nd for a big fundraiser. We're doing it right over. Is it still a Radisson, or what is it over in? They
It's
changed
in Manchester,
the names.
is it?
No. We're doing it in Nashville, right here in Nashville.
Nashville? Oh, okay.
The one over there, the one that used to be the Crown Plaza. That's the one I remember.
Right.
The name I remember.
It's a Hilton now.
Okay. Whatever it is, it's going to be in Nashua, over what used to be the Crown Plaza.
Yeah, right.
And we're looking to get 800 to 1,000 people to attend. And we're very excited about it. It's going to be a great fundraiser, and it's going to be a great time and a great coming together of Republicans as we start rebuilding our party for 2020.
I think we have to hit the the people that are still in high school too. I think we have to develop there are political clubs in the high school here in Nashua, and both of them. We ought to be able to get in some. Those
that's
people
part
too.
of my business plan. I mean, we talk about the young Republicans, but I also talk about the college Republicans, and I know we have chapters in the 5 major colleges like Dartmouth and UNH and St. A's and Plymouth and Keene, but we have all the community colleges.
Right.
And we should have, because those are the kids who are actually working and going to school at the same time. Those are the kids that are truly Republicans.
Yeah.
Because they understand what sacrifice is. Not that the other kids don't, but these kids are holding down, in most cases, a full-time job as they go to community college. And they are a natural constituency for
They know what
Republicans.
it takes to make a living and raise a family.
And so we need to get into the community colleges with Republican committees there. And as you said, I devote a whole section on developing Republican clubs at the high school level. I was a member of, for many, many years, a member of Rotary. And the Rotarians have Rotarian clubs at the high schools.
Right.
And those kids come out, they work with the Rotarians on volunteer projects and so on. And there's absolutely no reason why we can't have the same. Now, all we have to do is go and get a Republican teacher, and there are a good number of Republican teachers out there, and get them to sponsor a club. And so we need to develop that across the state as well, so that we're really reaching out and letting the young people know this is why you want to be a Republican, and this is why what the Republicans believe in is what you really should be looking at as well.
Well, I think that's in general. So we have to have something against the liberal ideas that they're hearing from some of their teachers.
Well, what it's really easy to be a Democrat because all you say is everything's free.
Yeah.
Just tax the rich. But when you look at the taxing of the rich are paying a bigger percentage of the taxes now than they ever have in the history of the country, even when the rate was 90%.
Yeah.
The rich are paying more now, the top 10% are paying more now as a percentage of the overall taxes than at any time in the history of the country. And for all the programs that they want, the Green New Deal, that's tens of trillions of dollars to institute that. We could tax and we could just confiscate all of the money of the top 10% of the wealthiest people in this country, and it wouldn't be enough to pay for all of the things that the Democrats want to do on their wish list.
And a lot of it's the wasting and the bureaucracy that we support in our government. That's one of the things that you talk about being business oriented. I think that has to we have to communicate that to the people who are running our administration.
There's no question that is an issue that is always there, and that obviously our current president is doing working very hard to get a handle on that. But what really is concerning is how far left the Democrats are going. And if you look at where Bernie Sanders, for example, stood in 2016 and the stances he took in 2016, and now his current stance is 2 years later, he has shifted remarkably far further to the left than where he was, because the whole party has shifted there. And there's a stampede to the left. And if you look at the issues and the things that they're asking for and promising people, it's just a fantasy.
Well, the other thing is the way their concept is always one thing will fit everybody. Well, that's almost impossible to do. You don't have, in a lot of their programs, you don't have a matter of choice. You get a menu and that's it. You work from that menu. You don't have anything else.
What was the famous saying when they passed Obamacare?
Yeah.
You can keep your doctor, you can keep your insurance if you like it. Well, that was a bald-faced lie.
Yeah.
So it's not, and remember Nancy Pelosi, we have to pass it before we know what's in it. And there was no truer statement than that statement, because it was atrocious once it got passed what was really in it. And we're still finding out what's really in it. And so when they start making these proposals and these broad brush proposals, what we're going to end up with is literally, how's it working for Venezuela?
Yeah.
That they ran out of other people's money to give. There's a case where they went after and took all the money from all the rich people. And that money's gone now.
Yeah, yeah.
And even though that was one of the most prosperous countries in South America,
Right.
and has a wealth of
Oil,
natural
yeah.
resources,
Yeah.
all sorts of natural
Yeah.
resources, they are bankrupt. The people are starving because they ran out of the rich people's money.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't give everybody everything for free.
Well, that's, I'm a little bit afraid of this, what would you call it, the family leave that they're trying to incorporate into another Obamacare type of program.
Well, it's really interesting when you talk about the Family and Medical Leave Act,
Right.
because currently we don't have family leave, but we do have medical leave. Most all companies provide medical leave through short-term and long-term disability. It's paid through the health insurance plans that companies provide for their employees, and it pays in most all cases, pays 100% of your salary if you go out sick for anything more than a few days. So if you're out long-term with an illness, you have short-term, and then you've got long-term that picks up after a certain period of time, and it pays 100%. And you don't, it's covered with your health insurance.
And you have a choice among different places.
But the way the Democrats have structured this, that benefit from the companies now goes away.
Yeah.
So if you get sick, the 100% coverage that you had that was being paid for primarily by your employer, that's gone. Now it's being replaced by a medical leave that pays you only 60%. And oh, by the way, you have to pay 0.5% income tax, which can be indiscriminately raised at the whim of the commissioner without any legislative oversight. And so you're going to give up this great benefit you have. You're going to pay through the nose for a far inferior product. Right. And oh, by the way, we'll also give you family leave. So you are really paying.
And everybody's going to have to participate. Isn't it?
It's the way it's structured. Everybody, you have to opt out of it, which is a very complicated process for the employee to opt out of it. But it is again, read the fine print and realize what you're getting and what you're sacrificing in order to get it, and how much you're paying. And the fact of the matter is, if the commissioner decides that he wants to raise the benefits to 100%, that 0.5% income tax that you're paying as an employee,
certainly will go.
That could be 2 or 3 or 4% before you know it, because they've decided to raise all of the benefits.
Well, that's how income taxes worked in New Jersey and Connecticut and some of the states on the East Coast, and it's up higher now than 5%.
Oh, 5, 6, 7%. I mean, you go into New York City, and not only do you have a state income tax, you have a city income tax. So, it's be careful of the details.
Right.
And what scares me most about that is the fact that they have usurped the legislators' authority to an unelected official in the commissioner, who can indiscriminately, at his own discretion, raise the benefits, raise the income tax, and the legislature has nothing to say about it. Now that scares me.
Well, I agree with you, but that's again a big government. The government always knows best, and I don't buy that.
Right. So these are some of the things that as I said, I knew the Democrats were going to do a lot of foolish things, but they've surprised even me.
Well, I'm hoping that we can really straighten this out, because that really is the worst way. The way we're headed right now is the worst future that I can see for us.
Well, again, if it wasn't for the fact that we had Governor Sununu as a stopgap, I think the damage that the Democrats could do to this state, as far as ending our economic progress and process, everything that we're doing positive for our economy, for our citizens, would be forever ended. And we would become nothing more than a clone of Massachusetts. And in fact, our business profits taxes, for example, were higher than Massachusetts.
Right.
And I think that, the chairwoman of the Ways and Means Committee, who's proposed raising all of the business profits tax, I think her secret goal is she wants to be number one. She wants to be the highest business profits tax state in the region, if not the country.
Well, I don't know what her logic is, but I agree that's where she's headed. She always thinks that we should be pulling in the money when we are pulling it in by cutting the taxes.
One of the things that the Democrats always seem to look at a static model.
Right.
So if they say we're making $100 million on the cigarette tax, if we raise it 10%, we'll make $110 million. But they don't factor in the idea that people will go elsewhere. If the price gets too high, they'll buy their cigarettes elsewhere. And in fact, it'll actually go lower. As an example, New Jersey passed the millionaires tax a few years back. Guess what the millionaires did?
Moved.
They moved out of New Jersey. And guess what happened? With the millionaire tax, which is a 10% surtax, I believe, they collected significantly less money. And they finally said, we better cancel this tax because we're losing money on this deal. But
it's funny how they don't realize that that's what's going to happen.
People can move. And I mean, in a lot of cases, they're actually now, one of the taxes that they just passed, or they're about to pass, is a tax on capital gains.
Yeah.
And they're going to tax at the same rate as interest and dividends. Well, I look at that as a Florida stimulation tax package, because Florida doesn't tax, they don't have an income tax. They do have a sales tax, but they don't have an income tax. They don't have an interest and dividends tax, and they don't have a capital gains tax. So people who are in that position, people who own stocks and might make money after they've held the stocks for years and years, they're now going to just say, I'm not going to live in New Hampshire. I'm going to move to Florida. And moving to Florida could be as simple as saying, I have a house in Florida, I have a house in New Hampshire. I'm going to spend 6 months and 1 day in Florida and be a Florida resident, and then I'll spend the rest of the time in New Hampshire. And I'll avoid all these taxes that New Hampshire's piling on me. So not only do we, by adding this additional tax that we're going to do, which is the capital gains tax, some people who are living in New Hampshire who are now paying the interest and dividends tax may very well say, that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. I'm leaving. And oh, by the way, I'm taking the tax money that I'm paying on interest and dividends, I'm taking that with me because I get to keep it in Florida. And also, it also prevents new businesses from starting up in New Hampshire who may be thinking about it down the road going public. They're not going to start in New Hampshire because when they do, and they issue their first issue of stock, and people make money, employees who started with a startup and made big sacrifices as the company was growing, those people are now going to lose out because they're going to be paying a capital gains tax on all the hard work and the work that they did. And I did a startup, a number of them. And in the early days, you don't pay yourself. Your employees who are involved, especially in the high-tech startups, they take stock in lieu of pay because they're betting that the company is going to do well down the road. So they're taking a huge risk. And if the company doesn't make it, they're out. Their stock is worthless. But for those who take the risk and make those huge sacrifices in the beginning, the state is now going to come along and take a chunk of that from them. And these companies have a choice as to where they can start their business. And they're going to look at our tax code and they're going to say, you know what? New Hampshire's not a good place to start a business. Texas is a good place. Florida's a good place. Not so much New Hampshire anymore because, you know, if we're successful, they're going to take a big chunk of that. And so, but the Democrats don't look at it that way. And I don't understand. I'm a finance economics major, so this stuff sort of comes naturally to me. And I don't understand why the Democrats can't figure that out.
Well, the other thing is, you know, you're talking about the 10% tax on ultra wealthy people. They don't consider the philanthropy that they do. There's a lot of money out there that these people are giving away, and they'd rather give it through their foundation to direct areas where they feel that they want to support, rather than give it to the government in tax where it's spent on something they can't control.
And again, the people who are in the upper echelon, in the top 10 or even 1% of the population who are making them, you know, who are multimillionaires, if you target them that way at the state level, they can move. They have the flexibility to move. And not only do you lose the income that they're already putting into the state's economy, but as you said, they're no longer, if they move from New Hampshire or New Jersey down to Florida or over to Texas or wherever, that's where their philanthropy is going to go. That's where their donations are going to go into the local hospitals or the local theater groups or so on, down in Naples or Tampa or wherever they go.
Here.
And it's not, so there's a huge ripple effect of unintended consequences when they're driven out of the state by outrageously high taxes.
Okay, you're looking to enhance our communication with these people who, let's face it, the independent groups are the ones that we have to convince to lean over to our side. And how are we going to really enhance our communications? I mean, you mentioned a number of things, but can we do something where we get feedback from those people to see if they're listening or if they have questions?
Well, I will tell you that I'm already getting feedback from all of the press releases I'm doing.
Okay.
I'm getting significant feedback. We've finally heard from the RNC. We've never, I mean, from the NHGOP. We've never heard from them before. It's refreshing to see where the state party stands on issues. But obviously, what I'm doing is, and I'm spending a significant amount of my time. As I said, I got to raise money. I got to raise more money, and then I got to raise even more money. So I'm spending a significant amount of time. Not only working on all these other projects, but setting up and talking to high-end donors, working on the various programs that we're trying to get the average person involved in and build up our donor list so that we have the revenue and resources to really build out our communications. Because let's face it, we're not going to get a lot of help from the press. The local press I get along with, and they're pretty good. But in general, the media is not on the side of Republicans or our president. So we have got to come out with alternative ways of communicating with the vast majority of people out there. And that's through the social media network and platforms. And, you know, I'm really excited when I see the amount of resources and the amount of investment that the RNC has made on this type of communication, and they're going to be able to provide us with that. And you know, if we get the people on board based upon the money that I raise, then we're going to be able to really build between now and 2020, and I mean January of 2020, we're going to build a very robust communications network on the social media platform that's reaching out on a multitude of different levels to all of our constituents, whether they be young, middle-aged, or old, because they're all on various platforms. Even my parents, who are in their 90s, are all over Facebook. So, the kids, I have 3 daughters, 23, 25, and 27. And I talk to them about Facebook. Dad, that's so passé. and I said, well, what is it? Instagram is long gone, Dad. And it's Snapchat, and then they mentioned 2 or 3 others, and I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
But it's constantly evolving, constantly developing, and the millennium generation is at the forefront of this, and we have the resources at the national level. They have the resources, and they're, Brad, who is head of the Trump campaign, is a media guru, and he's a data guru. That's what he did. He worked for the Trump organization long before he came on his campaign, and that's all he did was data and social media. And so he understands it, and he's a driving force behind what they're doing on their data and their social media. So we've got people at the top who really, really understand it and are really driving it. And that's all going to be pushed down and made available. And I'm standing there saying, I welcome you with open arms. Give me as much as I can take. So I'm very excited about what we've got coming.
Well, it sounds very good. I just want to toss one other thing out. One of the things we were playing with for a while was trying to get a group in the ward, several different ward captains, if you will, or whatever, and they'd handle the communication with, maybe 50 houses around them, having barbecues or, whatever, cocktail parties or something like that. Where is this now?
Again, that is my initiative with the committee that I built under Kate Day. Okay, we want to set up. We have a total of 35 wards in our cities here in New Hampshire, and it's primarily Nashua, Derry, Concord, and Manchester. Those are the cities with wards. And so we want to build ward committees because some of these wards are bigger than most towns.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, I immediately got some pushback from the various city chairs. Well, we tried it in the past. I said, we're going to do it. I don't want to hear any negative. We're going to do it. Find one activist in a ward and build around them. We're going to support them. Not like in the past where you get somebody to do something and then they're left holding the bag and all by themselves. We're going to be there to help you. We're going to be there to support you. So yes, that's exactly what this committee is doing, is trying to get ward captains or an activist in each ward that will be the ward captain. And we'll do those things. And we're going to support them. We're going to train them. We're going to help them do so that in a particular ward, if you can have 15, 20, 25 people in that ward who are active and involved, when it comes time for election, those are the ones you're going to call on, and they're going to be there to hold signs in that ward for all of the committee members, for all of the legislators who are running. They're going to be the ones that you call on to organize door knocking and lit drops and phone calls, and those are your foot soldiers. And that's where your farm team starts, because that's where you start training them and educating them and getting them involved and saying, hey, maybe you should run for school board, or maybe you should run for alderman, or maybe you should run for selectman. And that leads to people who go from that to maybe running for state rep and then building from there. So that's where we train our people to get involved in local politics and then get involved in state politics and then ultimately
and giving them the ammunition to succeed.
Giving them the training, the tools, the resources to be successful. Now, I will tell you that I ran for state rep 5 different times. I was successful. I ran once for executive council. I wasn't successful. But in all of those races, I never got any support, help, advice, training from the state party. That is changing under my administration right now.
Good. Well, we're looking forward to hearing from you, and I hope have you back in a few months and tell me where we are.
I certainly will be looking forward to that as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much for all your time and information.
You're welcome.
And good luck.
Thank you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.